Sir Gawain is a knight in King Arthur's court, and ultimately was Arthur's nephew. A knight representing the perfection of chivalry, Gawain was one of Arthur's most powerful and noble knights, and one of his closest confidants. One of his most notable adventures is that of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, a tale of exchange, honor, and oath-keeping. During the time of Yuletide, King Arthur's court was celebrating merrily, exchanging gifts and waiting for a feast to begin to mark the holiday season. During the wait, the king asked to hear about the knight's adventures in order to entertain the court. However, as one of the knights began to speak, the doors to the hall bust open and a gigantic figure clad in green robes, with green skin and red glowing eyes, rode into the hall on his massive green steed. The giant gripped in one hand a massive green axe, and in the other a holly bow. The knights took up defensive positions around Arthur and began to challenge the stranger to combat, for they feared the Green Knight would ultimately attack their king. The giant told the court that he was not there to fight, but to instead have a fun Yuletime game of exchange. Arthur asked the man what the game was, and he responded with him a game of trades. He would allow one man in the court to strike him with his own axe, if, in 1 year, the Green Knight would be allowed to strike him the same, and any man who accepted this challenge would be allowed to keep this axe. Arthur, not one to back down from challenges, began moving forward until his nephew, Gawain, placed his hand on his uncle's breastplate and asked him for the honor of this game. Arthur allowed Gawain to take the challenge, and the young knight moved forward, accepting the axe from the green giant. The knight placed his head down and told Gawain to swing with all of his might. The younger knight did as he was told, but the Green Knight's head was lopped off with one single strike. The court gasped in astonishment. However, the Green Knight then stood up and grabbed his head and told Gawain to meet him in 1 year and a month at the Green Chapel, and rode off. Gawain, struck in horror by what he just saw, placed the axe near his chair and began to contemplate what had just happened, while Arthur tried to calm everyone else down. 1 year later, Sir Gawain set off to find the Green Chapel, taking his golden armor and shield to protect him on his journey. He traveled for 40 days and 40 nights looking for the chapel, all the while helping people along the way and slaying monsters as he found them. On the 41st day, Gawain had to take refuge in a nearby hut, for the mist was too great to see properly. When the poor weather subsided, he was able to see a beautiful castle on the mountainside, and so rode off to introduce himself to the lord of the castle. He was greeted at the gate by Bertilac de Hautdesert, the lord of this castle. The two exchanged pleasantries, and Bertilac was happy to have a member of the famed court of Arthur in his castle, and Gawain told him of his travels and what he sought. The lord informed Gawain that the Green Chapel was less than a day's ride from his castle, and that Gawain should stay and feast with him and his family until the day arrived. When Gawain was brought into the feasting hall, he was introduced to the king's beautiful wife and an older woman who both were treated with high honor in the court. The two men then celebrated their new friendship that night with a feast and told tales of their own adventures. The next morning, Bertilac was setting up to go for a hunt with his men and proposed a game to Gawain. Whatever the man catches or gains throughout the day, they would give to the other. Gawain accepted this game happily, and the king rode off into the forest for his hunt. Later that day, the lady of the castle, Lady Bertilac, visited Gawain, and asked the knight if he would stay with her as she was very lonely. Gawain refused, as he didn't want anyone to get the wrong idea about what was going on between the two of them, so the lady of the castle kissed him on the cheek and left. When Bertilac arrived later that day from his hunt, he gave Gawain a deer he had killed, and Gawain kissed the man on the cheek. The next day, Bertilac left early for his hunt, and the lady of the castle came back to seek out Gawain again, begging to spend time with the knight, and, just as he had done the day before, Gawain refused. Lady Bertilac, however, followed Gawain around the castle until finally giving up and giving Gawain 2 kisses on the cheek before leaving immediately. When Bertilac arrived later that night from his hunt, he gave Sir Gawain a slain boar, and Gawain gave him 2 kisses on the cheek. On the 3rd day, Gawain met with Lady Bertilac, and she told him that she understood why he had not wanted to be alone with her throughout those days. But she still wanted to give him a token of her appreciation, a golden ring. Gawain refused the ring, saying it would be wrong to take something so valuable. So, instead, the queen took her sash off of her waist, a beautiful emerald and gold silk belt, and offered it to Gawain. At first, the virtuous knight rejected the gift, thinking it would create even more stir in the castle. But Lady Bertilac explained that the belt was enchanted and would protect him from any harm. Gawain took the belt, as he knew it would save his life in the following days when he met the Green Knight. The lady kissed Gawain 3 times on the cheek before she left, and they said their goodbyes. When Lord Bertilac returned from his hunt, he gave Sir Gawain a fox that he had hunted, and Gawain, in return, only gave him 3 kisses on the cheek, keeping the belt to himself and a secret. The next morning, Sir Gawain rode off early to find the Green Chapel. For 2 hours he rode, and when he finally arrived, he saw an old church that had been taken over by vegetation and nature. Inside, he found the Green Knight, dressed in ornate green and golden armor, sharpening a massive axe. As promised, Gawain showed the knight his neck, and the knight took his swing. However, Gawain flinched and put his hands up. The Green Knight joked about Gawain's bravery, or the lack thereof, which annoyed Gawain. However, the Golden Knight kept his hands behind his back on the following time, and the Green Knight swung his axe, but stopped just short of Gawain's neck. He told Gawain that he wanted to make sure that Gawain wasn't going to run away in fear this time, and to keep his promise. The younger man angrily told the knight to get on with this game so that it can be over. The Green Knight then swung one more time, but was met with great resistance, and his axe was only able to create a small cut on Gawain's neck. Gawain, protected by his new sash, jumped back, drew his shield and sword, and told the knight that their game was done, and that, if Gawain was not permitted to go, he would force his way out. The Green Knight started to laugh deeply, and took his helm off to reveal that he was Lord Bertilac, and that he knew how Gawain was protected. He further explained that he was testing Gawain from the moment he entered his castle, that the old woman was the sorceress Morgan Le Fay, Arthur's sister, and that this game had been put on to test Arthur's men and to scare Queen Guinevere away from Arthur's court forever. Gawain hung his head in shame and offered the green sash back to Bertilac, but the Green Knight refused. He told Gawain it was sensible to try to save one's own life, but that dishonesty leads to dishonor, and to regain that honor, he would have to be honest from henceforth. Gawain rode home after saying goodbye, and was met with his fellow knights of the Round Table. He told them the full story honestly, and the knights forgave Gawain for any trespass and dishonor that he may have brought upon the kingdom. After that day, all of the knights of Arthur's court wore green sashes to remind themselves of the honor and dignity that they had to uphold, and to always be truthful in both word and deed. Now, this is actually one of my favorite stories. The original is much longer, but I really like this one. I like the idea of honesty being one of the tenets of being a good person, and that we all make mistakes and we can come back from them, even if they are ones that kind of stain our honor. But what do you think? Let me hear in your comments down below. If you've got any ideas about where you would like to hear from the next legend, what kind of country of origin, or if you've got any monsters or heroes that you want to hear about specifically, let me know down below so I can start doing my homework for you guys. Anyway, I hope you all have a great day, and I'll see you next Friday. Bye.